Hello, welcome to our Heritage Works. Today, we are going to make a pizza sauce from scratch. The first thing that we need to do is set up our crock pot. You'll notice the silicone mat that I'm putting down. This is going to be a multi-day use of the crock pot, so I put that down to help protect the counter, just to make sure it doesn't overheat. Prior to this video, I had already taken 6 quarts of tomatoes, peeled them, and had them in the crock pot for 2 days. The first day, I just left the lid cracked slightly. On the second day, I added in 2 medium onions and 4 garlic cloves that were just slightly chopped. This is the start of day 3. It had been a couple of days since I had done the first 2 days of cooking the tomatoes. And out of the 6 quarts, this is all that's left. Now, I still want to reduce this down more, so I'm going to spend another 8 hours or so cooking this down. I'm going to put it on low, slightly crack the crock pot, and just let it sit. At the end of the day, I will gather up all my seasonings and be prepared to make the sauce. To the tomatoes, we'll be adding some basil, oregano, rosemary, thyme, some bell pepper, any color of your choice, some honey, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of lemon juice. These will be combined later as we cook down the sauce even further. You should go ahead and grind down any of the larger pieces of herbs that you have. So the rosemary, the basil, the thyme, all really should be as small as possible for the sauce. Some people like to pre-roast their tomatoes in the oven prior to cooking them, but after 2 days with the lid slightly ajar on the crock pot, I didn't feel like this is necessary because it already does a nice roast while you're cooking down the tomatoes. Now, if you remember, I said on the second day I added some onion and some garlic to the tomatoes. You can also add your bell pepper. You could even add some zucchini, carrots, celery if you like it in your sauce. It's up to you. My herbs are ground and ready to go. So I'm going to move things around a little bit and get out my high-speed blender so that I can puree everything that is available so far. Since this is a hot liquid, I want to be extra careful not to spill any on me or to get anything on me. But you're going to just simply put everything into the blender, all of your tomatoes and your bell pepper. From there, you're going to grind it up nice and smooth, and then we'll put it on the stove so that it can be heated up. I love the color of the tomatoes. You can see that they've got a nice roasted color to them. They've darkened up. Along the edge, you can see where the tomatoes had caramelized just slightly inside the crock pot. And this did this the first 2 days as well. I would go back about every 3 to 4 hours and stir the tomatoes to make sure that they weren't burning. But you want to make sure that these are well cooked down. Again, I started with 6 quarts of tomatoes, and I'm down to what'll fit inside of my blender at this point, and we're going to reduce it even further. If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe, like, share, and comment below, and that way we can continue to make these videos. It helps us get out there so that more people can see them. Once we've filled our high-speed blender, we want to puree the sauce down so that it's nice and smooth just before we reduce it any further. With the tomatoes all pureed, we can put it on the stove so that we can reduce it down even further. We'll probably take about another third of the liquid content out of the sauce. You'll notice that I bring this up to a boil. Every now and then I'm going to stir it just to make sure it's not sticking on the bottom. And I'm going to keep going at a low simmer for quite a while. Again, I want to reduce the liquid content that's in the chef. If you haven't noticed, I have not added my herbs yet. I'm waiting until the end, or closer to the end, for the herbs to be added because I don't want to have the herbs give up all of their flavoring and not have any of it left by the time we get to the point where we want to use it. After I've added all the herbs, I want to make sure I stir it really, really well so that all of these herbs are well blended throughout the entire sauce. I'm now going to add my sweetener to the sauce. I want it to be just a little bit sweeter than what you would get with the tomatoes by themselves. So I'm adding some honey, and then I'm going to stir it in really well, and then I'm going to taste it. As a tip, in order to taste it, I've got an extra small bowl off to the side. You can almost see it on the screen. And I dip the sauce into the bowl, and then I taste it from there. That way I can keep going and tasting it throughout the cooking time, and I don't have to worry about double dipping. With the taste test, I noticed it needed some salt to help enhance the flavor. I added as little as I could. I'm also adding just a touch more honey. The sauce also needed to be brightened up a little bit, so I needed to add a little bit of an acid just for that pop of flavor. And so I'm going to use a dash of lemon juice here. Not very much at this point. I'm using the lemon juice here to brighten the flavor. Later, when I can it, I'll be adding lemon juice, and that is to raise the acidity level. But that's after it's already been finished cooking. Of course, after having adjusted the sauce, I'm going to retaste it and see how it's going. The sauce is tasting pretty good, so let's put it on a pizza and see how it turns out. I have here just 2 crusts that I got from the grocery store. They're gluten-free, I believe they're cauliflower base. And I'm going to add my sauce. Now, I was taught by a pizza maker a long time ago, I think it was in my teens, so that most people put sauce on too thick and that it actually makes the crust soggy. So you'll see that I'm putting on a very thin layer across the entire pizza bottom. With the pizza crust coated with a nice thin layer of this fresh pizza sauce, I'm going to show you another tip that I have. and that is between layers, I'm going to add a little bit of this powdered Parmesan cheese. The reason I do this is, one, just to add a touch of flavor, but the primary purpose is to absorb any excess liquids that might be in the sauce, whether it's water or something like that that hasn't gone out, or even the pepperoni here has fat in it. It'll absorb some of that fat so that it's not just pooling up. You'll see that I add this Parmesan after multiple layers where it's possible that I'm going to have more fluid. Here I'm adding some pickled jalapenos. Please see my recipe for that. So there will be a little bit of excess juice there. I've added some other stuff as well. But after each layer where it's potential that there's going to be any kind of fluid, I want to make sure that I put in more of that shredded or powdered cheese. We really enjoy cheese on our pizzas, so I'm going to pile it up really high here. You want to be careful not to have too much. If you get too much of it going, then the inside of the pizza won't cook. So there's a balance between having a lot of cheese and still getting the pizza cooked all the way through. As another tip, I'm going to add more of that grated cheese on top for flavor and for browning. I'm also going to mark with sauce on top of the pizza whose pizza is which. This is in case I have different toppings. In this case, I've done the exact same toppings, but frequently we will have different toppings on our pizzas, and this way I know after it's been baked as to whose pizza is whose. The pizza was absolutely delicious. Now I need to can up whatever was left over. So I'm going to reheat the sauce, and I've set up everything on my counter so that I can go through and can this and preserve the leftovers for other meals. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. Again, this is to make sure there's plenty of acid in the canning process. Then I'm going to add in the sauce. I'm going to take out and make sure that all the bubbles are out of it and that I've got a ½ inch of head space. Then I'll wipe down the jar rim and seal area, make sure there's no debris on there that could compromise any seal that I've got going. And I'm wiping it down with just a little bit of vinegar. Then I'll put the lid on, and I will then put a ring on, finger tight, and then put it in the canner and go on to the next one. since this is a tomato-based product, I'm going to can it according to the canning standards for tomatoes and for my altitude. Then I will take them out of the canner and put them on the counter to cool before labeling. One tip I have for the canner: when you're done, I leave the lid on for 5 minutes. I take the lid off for 5 minutes. Then I'll raise the basket up for 5 minutes. Then I take it out. That way the jars have a chance to cool much slower and gentler, and that helps with potential for siphoning. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I hope that you'll give it a try. Thank you. Bye.